Diabetes is a disease in which the blood sugar levels are above normal. The way that our bodies work is we break down food into sugar, and our cells use the sugar for energy. With a person who has diabetes, either their pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin or doesn't use the insulin appropriately.
Diabetes is an autoimmune disease that is caused by your immune system attacking the cells in your pancreas and rendering them unable to make insulin, which you need to live.
There are two types of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2. I have type 1, and type 1 is when your pancreas stops producing insulin, essentially, giving you no insulin. And you need insulin to live because it eats up all the sugars you eat in your food.
So type 1 diabetes is what I have, and that's insulin dependent. So it requires you to take an insulin injection or have an insulin pump hooked up to you at all times. Type 2 diabetes, which usually doesn't become a disease in people until they're older, is not insulin dependent, meaning you do not have to take insulin injections. You take a prescription medication that helps control your blood sugars through a pill.
Type 2 diabetes typically develops after age 40, although we have seen type 2 diabetes and we are continuing to see type 2 diabetes in our overweight children.
I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 6th grade. It was on October, right around Halloween, and I knew I had diabetes because it was a constant week of me going to bed at 8 o'clock. I was going to the bathroom all the time. I was very irritable. And it were things that may seem normal, but they didn't happen normally. Like, it was happening all the time, constantly. And I told my mom what was going on, so I took an at-home test, and it was positive. So then I did my blood sugar, and it was, I believe, the 300 or 400s. And normal blood sugar is between 80 and about 140, so being at 300, 400s is very high on the blood sugar scale. But after that, I went to the hospital for 2 or 3 nights, and they just told me how to manage myself, how to count carbs, and just how to take care of myself in everyday life.
At first, when she was diagnosed, she used to take the shots all the time, and I used to have to, well, not all the time, but sometimes I would give her the shots. And I had honestly thought that it was like a really freaky thing, and like I was kind of scared of it. But as we got older and she got a pump instead, so like I never know when she's taking insulin. I just don't notice it anymore, so it's really different than how it first started.
Well, when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I was about 15 years old, and I started my treatments with pig insulin. So they didn't have the new insulin that they have now. That was, it's basically synthetic human insulin. So the types of insulin and the quality of insulin has definitely come a long way.
There's been a huge advancement in technology. Years ago, most students would administer their insulin with shots, and today almost all of my students are on the insulin pump.
Also, the testing of your blood sugar and the testing supplies have come a long way. It doesn't take as long. It used to take me like 30 seconds or a minute and a half. You would have to wait for your blood test to be done. Now it's 5 seconds and it's done.
There's definitely a lot of things people believe about diabetes that is not true. A lot of people believe I can't eat certain things like candy or very carb-filled foods, but I can really eat whatever I want as long as it's in moderation.
Yeah, there's been a couple incidents where I wasn't able to do something I thought I would be able to do, no problem, wouldn't be related to diabetes. Scuba diving when I was on vacation once, they wouldn't let me do it because apparently they don't want to take the liability, so they don't want to, their insurance coverage doesn't cover it, or they don't want to incur the liability, so they wouldn't let me scuba dive. I ended up snorkeling.
When I was younger, I used to mix up the types of diabetes all the time, and now I know type 1 is juvenile diabetes, where your pancreas doesn't make enough insulin, or doesn't make any, I don't think. I didn't know that for a while, and I used to get in heated arguments with people insisting that my friend had type 2 diabetes and not type 1, and she has type 1, and now I know I was really wrong for a really long period of time.
Some myths that I have heard about is that you can catch diabetes from another person, and you can't catch diabetes from somebody else. It's not an infectious disease.
Another thing people often believe is that when we play sports, we have to be extra careful, which is kind of true, but I can play sports like anyone else. Like I was on a soccer team, and when I was newly diagnosed, my coach kept taking me out every 5 minutes, and at the end of the game I told her that's not necessary. I can play a full game and I'll be fine.
So another myth that I've heard is you can have a little bit of diabetes. Once you're diagnosed with diabetes, you will always have diabetes.
People in general just assume that, you know, something will happen to you that wouldn't happen to a normal person, and it's just not true. So,
having diabetes, the lifestyle is very normal to me. I barely remember not having diabetes. I was 11 or 12 when I was diagnosed, and to me, I think it's weird people don't have to always have medical supplies. They don't have to do their blood sugar. They don't have to take insulin. Like, to me, that's odd because that's my everyday life. So I'm just very accustomed to it. So it doesn't really make a difference, I guess.
I've been best friends with a diabetic for years now, and honestly, it's no different than just being best friends with somebody who doesn't have diabetes. I mean, I don't know what goes on, like when I'm not around her, but when I'm around her, it's no different.
Diabetes definitely affects my life, but it's not drastic. It only affects my life because I have to watch myself maybe more than other people. I just always have to be prepared. I have to always have juices on me, snacks, extra medical supplies. But other than that, I live my life normally like anyone else.
you just have to remind people that it's really just, you know, as long as you're taking insulin and watching what you eat and carbs and keeping your blood sugars fine, you can pretty much do anything you want.
People with diabetes have no limitations. People who are more famous that have diabetes is Halle Berry and Sharon Stone, both are actors. Nick Jonas, a singer-songwriter. There's a professional snowboarder whose name is Sean Busby, who's got type 1 diabetes. So people with diabetes can be just as successful as somebody without diabetes.